I'm Chris with ToolboxDIY, and today's video is going to be the short version of how to modify a metal base cabinet to fit a sink. I'm going to jump right in on how you cut up the cabinet, how you install the sink, and I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the details or some of the challenges that I encountered, and I'm not even going to go through the measurements. If you want more detail and you want to see some of those tips and tricks, then I encourage you to check out the long version, which you can find by clicking on up here. So let's get started. I built a template here that I'm using to make sure that I get this right. I'd hate to buy a countertop or a base cabinet twice because I screwed this up. I start by measuring the cutout size for the sink on the template. Now, rather than using the recommended cutout size that comes with the installation instructions, I'm actually measuring it to figure out the smallest opening I can get away with since I have such a tight fit here. Once I have the cutout mark, I use a drill at the corners to drill a hole just big enough to fit a jigsaw blade, and then I use the jigsaw to make that cutout. I test fit this, and since it fits, I then use the template to draw cutout lines onto the top of the cabinet. Now, before I commit to making the cut of the cabinet, I check to make sure I'm not going to cut into any structural members of the cabinet or any place where there might be metal seams or overlapping metal. Looks good. I have no obstructions within the sink cutout here, so I'm going to move on to cutting the cabinet. Just like the template, I drill holes in the corners, but this time those holes are large enough to fit a sheet metal nibbler. This is a pneumatic tool, so it requires an air compressor, but it makes very short work of cutting through this metal. Now, you could use a jigsaw. You just have to make sure that you have a blade that's suitable for cutting metal. Now, I do another test fit using the template over the cabinet, since the template is the same thickness as the countertop that I'll be installing. During the test fit, I loosely install the sink mounting screws and clips to make sure that they'll fit. These clips are plastic, so they can be trimmed quite a bit and still provide enough holding power for the sink. The second test fit goes well, so now I'm going to move on to cutting the countertop. I could use the template, but it's easier and more accurate to position the countertop and then trace the cutout lines from the bottom, from the inside of the cabinet. I'm going to move on to doing the cutout in the back for the plumbing connections. I first use a piece of cardboard to kind of get a rough shape of what the cutout should look like. Cardboard's easy. If I screw up, it's no big deal. I can trim this however I like. Once I have the cutout that I like, I can just take that cardboard template, place it on the back of the cabinet, and draw the outline for the cutout. So now back to the drill and the nibbler to make the cutout. After I install the countertop permanently, I attach the faucet to the sink and pre-install the water supply hoses. The last test fit is a bit of a dry run for installing the sink. The final install of the sink will have a bead of silicone around the lip of the sink, and I want to make sure that I can install this properly without getting silicone all over my hands or ruining that bead. I tape around the sink lip during this test fit. That way when I do the final fit, this will make cleanup of the silicone much easier. Alright, so I then prep the sink, I drop it in, and then I start attaching it in the clips. It's a pretty big pain to attach these clips because I don't have a lot of space for the wrench, but I was able to get it done before the silicone started to dry. And then I wrap it up by making all the plumbing connections, and then I test it out. That's all there is to it.